the anime industry is dying. And before you say, I knew it, them Chinese are killing the Japanese industry. No, that's not what I'm talking about. The anime industry is not collapsing because of competition. The dongo industry will never catch up to the anime industry because they simply don't have the resources or the manpower to pump out as much content as the anime industry does on a regular basis. It's not external forces that's affecting the industry. The problem is internal. First of all, I have to say that this video is sort of like a follow-up to my other production analysis videos, particularly this one, where I go over the large-scale problems of just too many shows being made, which is just harming the animation industry. In this video, I'm going to talk about the smaller scale stuff, how the individual people working on the shows are affected. And of course, since they're affected, it will result in a domino effect that affects the entire industry. The idea of art as a whole it's very complex, it's very deep, and the perception of art is different for many people. But there are two things that are common with most art forms. For the creator of the art, it's a means of expression. And for the viewer, it's a means of escapism. The purpose of anime is to take you out of your boring, shitty life and put you into this unique, beautiful world that has been created in a way that it feels fantastical, but you're so engrossed in it that you feel it's real. And the creation of such a world is no easy task, especially when you're only working with 2 dimensions. It requires teamwork involving people who have specialized talents, the directors whose ideas form the basis of the world, the animators who put the director's idea on paper, and the background artists who invent a living, breathing world around these characters. And of course, that's only half the components. This is only the visuals. There's also the audio department, music, sound effects, and voice acting. So for these many people doing completely different things to be on the same page, literally, the initial plan will have to be laid out in the best possible way, and it is done in the form of layouts. Layouts refer to rough animation that forms the basis of the entire project. The first step in the making of both manga and anime is laying out the storyboard. Storyboards are just rough sketches detailing what the final product will look like. What separates anime from manga is movement, and layouts are where movement is born. Having an actual highly detailed layout will do wonders for the process of animation. For example, let's take Wit Studios' Attack on Titan, right? It's got so many moving parts. You need animators who are usually freelancers. You have the CGI crew. There's a lot of CGI backgrounds in Attack on Titan, and the CGI is done by an entirely different studio. And there's compositing, which is again done by a different studio. So it's crazy to just watch scenes that look like this and just wonder as to how all of these completely different teams were able to communicate their ideas so properly. And for the answer to the question, all you need to do is look at the basic layout by Arifumi Imai. You'll see that the rough character model conveys the movement perfectly. He also makes background sketches of buildings that the CGI crew is going to use as reference to make the models. And that is why Arifumi Imai was able to create animation sequences of such high level of quality, working in a team where pretty much every single component was done by a different group of people. His ideas were never lost in translation because he laid out his ideas so perfectly. Now, layouts have been around for a long time, and it really came forth as a major component of animation in Hayao Miyazaki's work in Heidi. You can see here that the layouts are absolutely godlike. Not only does he convey the framing and the movement of the character models perfectly, which is what layouts are supposed to do, but he goes a step beyond and also pretty much maps out the backgrounds for the background artists to then work on it. And while you rarely see layout of this level of detail, it is still an extremely important thing to have because they make up for the inability of storyboards to properly convey the ideas of framing and movement. Unless, of course, you're talking about Megumi Shitani storyboards, they literally look like colored manga panels. So the established dynamic between the director and animator for a long time, it's been that the director will put forth the storyboards, but ultimately the animator makes the decision of what the movement will be like via the layout, unless the director is doing the layout. But in most cases, animators are the ones who do the layout because the directors are usually busy as fuck with storyboards. And since the animators are able to express movement in their own unique way with their layouts, it allows for the anime medium to have the level of creative expression that no other industry is capable of matching. This is of course only true if the animator's ideas are still present in the final product, because there are a lot of stages where their ideas could just get fucked. Let's take a good example of teamwork, what the industry should strive towards pretty much. if I'm talking about good teamwork, it is pretty much mandatory that I use Ufotable as the example. So here's a scene by Nozomu Abe. And while we can only see the final product here, it is very easy to see that this scene has incredible layout. It is a complex rotation shot that begins with like a fisheye lens, panning all the way around Zenitsu's body, from where it then rotates and then shifts to a regular lens and then zooms out. Now, something like this is obviously not possible in real life. You can't switch lenses mid-recording. This is the medium of animation being utilized to its full potential. And the layout here was probably done by Nozomu Abe himself. In the anime industry, it's not rare for veterans to do everything, the layout, the key animation, and the animation direction or correction. So it's very likely that Nozomu Abe is the one who did the layout for the scene. And he might have also skipped the storyboard process because he's an animator. And what I've seen from some animators' works, some of them just like to skip the storyboard process and then just begin with a rough layout. This scene had a rough layout at some point where Zenitsu was pretty much just a skeleton and the movement was mapped out perfectly around him with all the information about key animation, second key animation, in-betweening, background art, compositing, etc. So Nozomu Abe probably did all of the key animation for this. There's no need for a second key animator. And as for the in-betweening, I'm not sure if he did it himself or if other in-between animators were involved. But now look at the other components, the background. Here the background is full CGI and it is flawless. The rotation is so perfect and the way the background interacts and moves along with Zenitsu is a work of art. This is the kind of stuff that makes Ufotable. And the compositing here is just good. It's just lighting. It's not overblown like some other Ufotable scenes. Here it is just right. And the reason this cut ended up being so perfect is because of teamwork. Nozomu Abe's ideas were conveyed to the CGI department and the compositing department so well because they were with him when he was animating the scene. They were probably sitting across him, helping each other and communicating on how to do their works. Now let's pick out one parallel world from the multiverse where Ufotable sucks. Oh god, that's gotta be the worst universe out of the entire multiverse. But let's say Demon Slayer was just your average anime project. The director will make the storyboard for the scene, and they'll come to a roadblock because they have no animators. The role of acquiring animators then falls onto the production assistant who will have to recruit animators to work on the show in a tight production schedule with minimum pay. The production assistant goes to Twitter and finds some animator willing to do the layout. The animator draws the layout as well as he can with the amount of experience and time that he has, using the director's storyboards as reference. Then the key animator, and a completely different person, takes that layout and draws the keyframes for it. He might understand the ideas mapped out by the layout artist and then just draw the keyframes for it, or not understand it, changing the movement into something completely different and mapping out the keyframes for that. Then the second key animator, again a completely different person, comes in to fill in the gigantic blanks left by the key animator because there's only so many keyframes you can draw in a tight production schedule. Then comes the animation director, again a different person, who makes the corrections. The product at this point might look decent and the animation director just makes corrections to it, or the product might look like a jumbled fucking mess, which the animation director will then have to make corrections for. And depending on how much of a jumbled mess it is, the animation director might just completely reanimate the sequence. The Genga will then be shipped off to China, Philippines, and South Korea for slaves. In between animators to work on it. And if there's CGI in the scene has to be outsourced to the CGI crew, and finally outsourced again to the compositing crew. Unfortunately, this is how anime is being made today. Anime today is just made by a group of strangers who have no connections with each other, who just do their part with no communication with the other members, and just, I guess, hope that their ideas make it to the final product. Now you might be thinking that there's no way it can get worse than this, but oh, it can. What if these people trying to survive by just doing their part are forced to do more than just their part? For Attack on Titan's final season, the production schedule was so bad that some of the in-between animators were in charge of cleaning and corrections, which is supposed to be the role of animation directors, which usually comprises of veterans in the industry. And right now we have the RWBY anime, where second key animators are doing Doga. Second key animators at this point, as I said in like a previous video, they're just glorified in-betweeners. Now this forms a very complex vicious cycle which massively hurts the industry. No one here is coming out on top. The production assistants, they have one job, that is to get as many animators into the project as possible. You, literally you, watching this video, you could work on anime. You could just go on Twitter and put the title of animator in Japanese in your bio, and you might be contacted by production assistants to work in some show. I'm not even kidding. Just make sure you've posted some of your rough animations or some of your rough artwork. This could even be a really cool experiment. Just go to Twitter and say that you're an animator, and maybe you'll be approached by a production assistant. And these junior animators, they're thrilled with the idea of working for an anime. So they just go nuts to butts with what they're working on, make the scene look unnecessarily complex with really rough looking models. And the end result is just a poor looking layout that is also needlessly complex. And all it does is make the animation director's job much harder. They're going to have to make more corrections, and in some cases, they're going to have to completely reanimate the scene. Now, if the layout is good, however, that changes nothing as long as the production schedule is still bad and there is no communication between all of these people involved. A good example of this is Vincent Chansard's scene in My Hero Academia. Vincent Chansard is an extremely talented animator, and he made a really beautiful looking sequence for My Hero Academia's episode 21, I think, with the sequence where Toga transforms into Ochako. And the final product that we got, it looked nothing like the layout. Because Vincent only did the layout, he didn't do the key animation. Maybe because the schedule was so tight that he couldn't do it. Or more likely is that key animation was not asked out of him. He was just contacted to do the layout for this. And of course, what he'll do is make a layout that looks incredible without taking production conditions into consideration, because he's not even part of the production. The scene is extremely complex, so key animation for this will require a lot of work. And so it was just entirely scrapped. The final product looked nothing like Vincent Chansard's layout, and his layout was just wasted. It was not even used for the Blu-ray. If the production schedule was better, then the final product would definitely utilize ideas laid out by Vincent Chansard's layout, or Vincent would have gotten to do his own Genga. But even if the production schedule sucked, as long as if there is at least communication, he could have dumbed down his layout, adjusted the quality to match the bad production schedule. Another example of good layout being pretty much ruined is with the case of Mehdi Aoi Choi. I hope I didn't butcher your name. Mehdi animated the fight scene between Nanami and Mahito, and his layout looks really good. The movements look really clean, they look really nice. And his layout was fucked at every single stage. His animation had too many frames, too much detail to be converted into the final product with the mediocre production schedule for that episode of Jujutsu Kaisen. So the final product that we got looked extremely stiff, and it also had a bunch of animation errors. For example, in this scene, in the layout, you can see that Nanami is sliding. In the final product, this scene is just skipped. We don't see Nanami sliding, so it just looks like Nanami teleported. This bit of animation where Mahito is gathering cursed energy, also removed from the final version. Nanami's running scene looks completely awkward in the final version. The exchange of blows between the two also turned to shit. Then there's the zoom in of Nanami's face, which is supposed to show Nanami's eyes. That's a cool idea. But in the final product, they just zoom in without showing Nanami's eyes. So that idea is just completely lost. What is even the point of zooming into Nanami's face now? The landing scene in the layout looks really good with some very good looking effects animation. And in the final product, the effects are just completely ruined. Not to mention with the subtle movements within Mahito's hair, his clothing, and also Nanami's clothing. All of that completely ruined in the final product. And if that wasn't enough, the background looks absolutely disgusting. The CGI looks awful. This is the kind of CGI I expect in a first-person shooter game set in the 2000s, where there's a mission in which you go through the sewers. And the compositing is not doing the CGI any favors. It's just adding this extremely ugly looking textures on top of the already ugly CGI. And this sucks. This really sucks. It is a system where everybody is losing. If it's talented animators like Vincent and Mehdi who are making the layouts, it sucks for them because their work is just being wasted since it's barely being used in the final product. If it's junior animators making the layouts, it also sucks for them because they're not getting to see their work through. They're not growing as animators. They don't even understand if their work is good or not. They're just doing work. And the key animators, they're completing works that is not even their own. And since there's a huge disconnect between the layout artist and the key animation, it might result in a product that is not very good, which results in more work for the animation director. More work for the animation director, already one of the most busy roles in the creation of anime, results in bringing in more animation directors to the project who might have very little to no experience, resulting in a bad final product. This system is killing the animation industry. Comparing this to the system that used to be, it's night and day. Let's take Arifo Mimai, one of the greatest action animators in the industry. Let's take his career as an example. He started off as a junior animator who did in-between animation for production IG shows. In 2009, he worked on Sengoku Basara, where he did in-between animation. but he also got the opportunity to do key animation. He made the most out of that opportunity. He did some amazing key animation work for Sengoku Basara, especially this horse flipping animation thing. That is just so fucking unique. It looks so crazy, but it looks so good. The next major project he worked on is Guilty Crown, where he did key animation and now also did animation direction. At this point, he was already a relatively well-established name in the industry, and so that, combined with his connections with Production IG, put him into Attack on Titan's production, where he was an action animation director and the lead action animator. And the rest is history. He became one of the greatest action animators ever. In 2015, his fame brought him into One Punch Man, and recently he worked on Osama Ranking, where he was the assistant director. This is a natural, healthy progression for a person who's part of the industry. By healthy, I mean he still worked his ass off to extreme degrees, but it is still a relatively healthy progression. Now take a junior animator approaching the industry today. Chances are they're not going to do internships in animation studios. They're not going to do in-betweening either. They're just going to be contacted by a production assistant and asked to do layouts. They pour their heart and soul into the layouts and then just give it away to the production team, who they're not even a part of. And then they just fuck off until they're contacted by production assistants again, and they just scribble out another layout for them. They're not getting the opportunity to grow their talents. The industry has come to a halt in terms of progression for the younger talent. Are there ways to fix this? There are actually, and there are two in particular. Okay, take your guesses, alright? What are the two things required for the anime industry to keep progressing? You will never guess the right answer. Okay, here goes. You need more money and more time. The directors being used as a cum dumpster, they're just pumping out storyboards. They cannot afford to lay out their scenes with love and care, because taking more effort won't give them more money. What will make them more money is just pumping out as many storyboards as possible. And if you think for one fucking second that they're doing this because they're greedy, you're completely wrong. The directors are focused on making money, not because they're greedy, but because the industry is forcing them into such system. They're focused on making money is because money allows them to survive. There are directors who have failed to do that. Now, these basic necessities required for survival is not even necessary for these people if they at least have the time to craft what they want to do with the passion. But alas, they don't even have that luxury. So yeah, what's gonna happen? Your favorite high-profile shows, they're not gonna be affected. Demon Slayer, obviously not gonna be affected. Shows like Mob Psycho 100, Chainsaw Man, they won't be affected much either. In those cases, the people involved are so big that the production assistants don't even have to actively seek out animators. Everyone wants to work on these shows, and because the projects have enough time and money going into it, for the passion of all of these people working in it to be explored, it's not going to cause any issues. But shows like RWBY and One Direct Priority, which would have been high-profile shows, those kind of shows are going to suffer. And the current system will eventually die. And it's up to us to stick around and witness what will come out of his ashes. And yeah, that's about it. I know this was kind of a depressing video. Now that's 2 in a row that I've made pretty depressing videos, but I'm focused on educating my viewers about the truth of the animation industry, and I'll keep doing this. I'm planning on doing some more animation breakdowns next. Maybe I'll finally do that animator spotlight for Nozomu Abe. If you like this video, leave a like. If you did not like it, dislike. You can talk to me down in the comment section. I read most, if not all, of the comments. If you want to see more of my stuff, subscribe. And that's about it. Thanks for the views.